So, this is Mirror's Edge Catalyst. Specifically, it's the Mirror's Edge Catalyst closed beta, the full game which was due to launch in just under a month, but has now been delayed by a couple more weeks to June 9th. Hello again, I am Blunty, and the very first time I tried out the Mirror's Edge Catalyst beta was live on a Twitch stream, and, to put it lightly, I wasn't impressed. It's probably safe to say I spent 88% of the time whining about annoying crap it was doing. It was running very poorly, there was a crap ton of hideous motion blur which was on by default, and I couldn't find an option to turn it off anywhere in the graphics menus, and after an hour or so of play it had me feeling quite sick. So sick I had to go lie down in a dark room. I hate motion blur in games. Furthermore, the control felt sloppy and worse, inconsistent. Sometimes it'd do what I expected it to do when I pressed a button, sometimes, seemingly randomly, it would just ignore my input and just make me eat floor shit for no apparent reason. And it seemed like every 30 seconds or so, the game itself kept stalling me out and getting in its own way when all I wanted to do was run and leap and explore and play and generally feel like a badass. There were weirdly timed cutscenes out of nowhere, NPC dialogue that ran over other NPC dialogue so you couldn't hear a damn thing that was going on, incredibly shitty tutorial missions that triggered a full reload screen, long reload screen by the way, if you made even the slightest misstep from the strict rails it wanted you to follow. I wound up so annoyed and frustrated I just quit in the middle of a mission, certain that I'd never bother booting it up again. And after I closed off the stream I tweeted out that I was sure there was a good game in here somewhere, but it was so buried beneath its own bull crappery it just probably wasn't worth trying to dig it out. But I did go back to it, and while when I was streaming I ran it in a windowed mode because I only have one monitor right now. My second go, however, was in private, so I ran it full screen proper, and once full screened it did actually let me access many more graphical options, including the ability to turn off motion blur, thanks sweet Jeebus. It also ran a little bit better. It still doesn't run great, even on my GeForce GTX 980 Ti, but it was at least running better. Comparatively, relatively. And I'm not going to jump on its tits too much about how well it runs, or doesn't run, because anyone who knows anything about game development knows that ironing out optimization is one of the last things to get nailed down before going gold. Sometimes not even then. Hello world of annoyingly huge day one patches we live in these days, where developers don't feel like they have to actually finish a game before shipping it because they can, we can just do it in a patch. Ugh. But let's not get bogged down into that rant again. Now, aside from the frame rate issues, of which there were many, one huge problem was texture pop-in. The game just isn't loading in textures nearly as fast as it needs to keep up with itself. Not just to the point of having high-res textures only pop in after several seconds of being in an area, preferably standing still, but more than once I was running through the city and entire chunks of buildings weren't loading in at all. And that is a huge problem for this game, because what looks like empty gaps in between buildings or a flat rooftop might actually be completely traversable corridors and ramps, and in some cases with NPCs in them that didn't load in until I was in the area for like 10 seconds. And by the time they do eventually load in and snap into existence, I've already been brought to a complete screaming miserable halt, losing all of my momentum, rhythm, and the game mechanic dependent perk that you get for not stopping. But all that is the kind of thing you'd hope would be able to be fixed by launch. They're performance things to be expected, to some extent, in a beta. And once I got past most of the incredibly crappily set out tutorial BS missions where the game keeps tripping over its own stupid feet and making the whole experience of progressing in even any small way so astonishingly frustratingly retarded, I nearly never gave it another chance at all. But if you do manage to push through all of that and get to the point where the game will actually leave you the frack alone for 5 seconds or more to feel like you are in fact in control of your own character, it actually starts smelling of fun a bit. Between when I first played and the second chance I gave it against my better judgment, there was a patch which seems to have ironed out some of the inconsistencies I faced. And with a bit more practice under my belt, I started to genuinely enjoy just moving around the slice of the city on offer in the beta. And the few various missions, which are all monstrously cliche faux open world stuff by the way, fetch quest and time-based delivery missions and simple races and a bit of combat, it's all deeply deeply uninspired from a conceptual point of view, but these are the MacGuffins to give you reasons to swim through the city's structures. I do wish they weren't so boring and cliche, but you gotta have something there to push you through the game, don't you? Free running does actually feel fun, getting a rhythm going, watching for fun paths to take, barely making big leaps. It all feels really quite enjoyable. At least it does once you turn off the motion blur and seriously pump up the abusively narrow default field of view settings to something wide enough so you don't want to consistently power vomit everywhere while playing for even 30 seconds. The weakest mechanic in the game has to be the combat. It's clumsy, limited, repetitive, and not even remotely rewarding. It doesn't feel as fluid as any other part of the game. It feels very much like it was just kind of stapled on, very, very late in development. I never really spent any time with the original game, by the way, and Mirror's Edge Catalyst is supposedly somewhere between a prequel and a reboot. Either way, I've no personal basis for comparison to the much-praised original, which in a way I suppose is a good thing. It means I can easily judge my experience here within its own merits and not compare it to what came before. And I do stand by my original thought. There is a good game here, but perhaps not quite as buried under annoying bullcrap as my first impression left me feeling, but it still does get in its own way far more than I'd like. I hope that in the final version of the game we will have much more breathing room for this kind of stuff than the beta structure allows for. But it's also not as open world as I like. Again, this may just be because of the beta. We're stuck in a little corner just to play in. But, for example, you can't even touch NPCs. You can't shove them, you can't kick them or punch them, you can't throw them off a building, nothing. They don't even react to you at all unless it's a scripted storyline. You can punch and swipe and kick as much as you like. You can stand as close to these guys as you like and just kick them in the face and they just go, "Hey, don't do that. Hey, don't do that. Hey, Faith, don't do that." It's deeply unsatisfying. GTA 5, Just Cause 3, these are my gold standards here. Both let you frell around with the NPC non-combatant populace as much as you'd like. It makes the worlds feel alive and functional and fun, and you get to be mischievous. In Mirror's Edge Catalyst, you don't get any of that. The world feels empty, very empty, sterile as a matter of fact, boring, stale. Feels like a half-finished VR simulation or something. And I know some of that is deliberate within the lore of the world you inhabit. It's supposed to feel a bit sort of overstructured and sterile and stuff. But that doesn't make it any less boring to inhabit a world like that. I mean, even the AI of the cars is so broken, it completely smashes any sense of inhabiting a real, alive world that you should care about at all. The game does at least look nice. The stylistic choices, stark and sterile as they are, do at least construct a unique setting, and it's usually pretty interesting to look at, run about in, explore, find the nooks and crannies and all those usual open-world collectathon crap, like documents and audio logs and other MacGuffin collectibles like computer chips. Yeah, this game is so far inside the box it can't even see the walls of the box. But all that said, again, I do feel like there's a good game in here somewhere, groping blindly to find the walls to claw against, desperate to be found. I think I will give the full game a go. There's hope here. The game is at least worth keeping an eye on, but if you're on the fence even a little bit, maybe wait for some of those week 1 reviews to come out before you throw your money down. So, who else out there has tried the closed beta? Do you agree with what I'm thinking? Have a different point of view? Maybe unlike me, you played the original game and have some extra context to add. Whatever the case, please do the thing in my down below area and let me know. Thanks for watching, I am Blunty, and I will catch you next time.